How to do a career pivot when the anxiety and the fear is right there. Welcome back to another episode of the 4Q podcast. If you're new here, my name is Sheena Shui. I'm a burnout therapist and a business mentor. So my job is to pull the best out of people so that they can thrive in their careers, in their businesses, and create something really unique that's going to change the world, right? And so I deal with people career pivoting a lot. As you can imagine, when people start their own business, that's a career pivot. And it can be really scary. So, I want to talk about the anxiety and the fear, whether you've done the career pivot, you're going through the career pivot, you're just thinking about it, wherever you are at, I want to talk about it because it's a big jump. And it's the best jump as someone who has done it myself and has helped so many others do the jump. It is really terrifying because if you think back to it from a neuroscience perspective, right, from a physiological perspective, our nervous system, our brains, our bodies do not like change for the reason that we want to maintain homeostasis, which is just a fancy word that says we want to keep what is already happening, keep that going, because change must mean that something crazy's going on, something big's going on. So again, your nervous system can't tell the difference between good change and bad change. It just registers change. So this is often why someone gets so excited about quitting their job. And then the week after, they're having panic attacks, they're having anxiety, they're freaking out. Or, somebody says yes to a new client, something like that, but they've never done it before. Is it exciting? Yes. But is that really big, really scary? Am I going to do this right? Am I going to stuff this up? All that fear and anxiety come up. The other thing it's really important to remember is when you're making any kind of career shift, often you might be going from, say, working in a really structured environment where you know all the ins and outs, all the rules, all the tech, all the unspoken rules of a workplace, right? Like, what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do, even though it's never really written anywhere. You know how to navigate that space. You know how to navigate that environment, right? When you pivot, not only whether you're pivoting into a new workplace or pivoting to working for yourself, that in itself, figuring out all the rules, all the structure, particularly if there's a lack of structure. So, if, for example, the first time you pivot, you're pivoting into a work from home role, it can be a bit panic inducing because you go, well, how do I structure my day? Oh, you just structure your day how you want to. If you've never had to structure your own day because you've always had things booked in for you back to back, this and that. That in itself can be overwhelming, going, okay, what should I be doing? How do I structure my day? What are the tasks I need to do daily, weekly, monthly? All of those sorts of things. Like that in itself is anxiety provoking. And when I say anxiety provoking, I mean fear provoking. I mean that feeling of, shakiness in the body. Our anxiety, our body, again, anxiety comes from a lack of predictability. So when we are feeling very anxious, you'll notice you'll try to micromanage the environment. Okay, what time are we going to get there? What time are we doing this? Who are we seeing? What are we doing? You need to know all the facts, right? Whereas someone who's not experiencing anxiety, if they're going into an environment, they're like, okay, whatever, just go with the flow. I'm ready for whatever comes. You'll know when you're feeling anxious when you see yourself start to micromanage things. It's that false illusion of control and predictability. If I can predict what's coming by micromanaging or doing this or doing that, it's a way of managing the anxiety. And so, obviously, when you're pivoting your career, there are so many unpredictable things that your anxiety will kick up. It will go, is this the right thing? What do we do? This and that. So, as long as you anticipate, oh my gosh, I'm going to feel fear, but I'm going to show up anyway, that's powerful. If you think it's going to all be hunky dory or like, I hated my old workplace, so I know I'm not going to feel bad. I think that's the mistake is sometimes people make a huge change and don't anticipate sort of the backlash of their nervous system from doing such a big change. Even things like buying a house. It's exciting. You get a new place, you're excited, you're thinking about, I'm going to put this in this corner, I'm going to buy this rug, I'm going to do this or whatever. But even that can really cause mayhem on you, which is often why I tell people do one big change at a time, because often someone will come to me and go, oh, well, we're moving and then I'm changing jobs and I'm going to try for a baby and we're planning our wedding. Like those four things, weddings, babies, houses, career, are the four really big changes that you will make in your life. And they're very vulnerable times, even though they're really good times. And so I want you to think about how are you making yourself more vulnerable? Are you doing anything like doing too many things at once, right? Like doing the house reno while you're pregnant and then thinking about starting something while you're doing that. Just you do it? Absolutely. You can do it with support from a therapist and business mentor, and you can do it with support from your community. But it's worth remembering that that's a very vulnerable time. So sometimes it's doing things in cycles of going, okay, we're going to do the house reno. And once that's done, I can do this. Now, obviously, life happens, and sometimes all the things happen at once. You get an opportunity that's been offered to you the same day that you're moving, or, the same day that you're due for your baby, or who knows. So it's just remembering to not overload yourself during these periods, right? And actually give yourself some space, give yourself some reprieve. Now, managing the anxiety when you do a career pivot. A really big mistake that I also see that can increase the anxiety because fair enough is when people pivot their career, they just completely shit all over the bridges they had built. And so they completely quit. So rather than seeing, hey, maybe can I like approaching your bosses or management and seeing, can I still do this role in a part-time capacity or a work from home capacity? So you're almost sort of staggering the pivot. So rather than completely quitting, it's still having some familiarity of working in your own workplace for 2 or 3 days a week, and then possibly pivoting by working for someone else 2 days a week or yourself 2 days a week. That way, you still have that sameness. You still have some financial stability, which is often a cause of anxiety of I'm doing all the things, but the money and the cash flow is low. And so staggering it can be a really good way to actually pivot your career because you're doing it in a way that feels comfortable. Now, that's not for everyone. I know some people, they've been planning this. They're planning the exit. They've got 100K in savings so that even if they get no clients for the first year, they're good. Whatever it is, they go all in. Don't get me wrong, if you've been pre-planning this for a while, that's okay. But sometimes people do this a little bit too prematurely. But also, sometimes you need to. If your mental health is not in a good space because of your workplace and you've got leave up your sleeve or you've got some way of doing it, then sometimes it is just to rip the band-aid off. But I do want to talk about just the fact that there are going to be periods where the state of anxiety, that feeling of dread, of fear, of overwhelmment, the panic, also happens when you're on the right path. A lot of people think that the anxiety means that you're on the wrong path. And I'll often talk about anxiety being your guidance system. It's the system you weren't born with it to not have it, right? I think a lot of people still think of anxiety as a chemical reaction that needs a chemical solution and we must shoo it away. No, anxiety is there to show you what's working, what's not, where your limit is, what's too much. And so you might have moments where you've got a new job opportunity, you've got to fly into state, your mum's sick, like there's a lot on. Maybe some of the things are really good. Again, exciting opportunities, but your nervous system is still calibrating to operating at a higher level. So the anxieties coming through is reminding you, hey, this is really exciting, but we need you to take care of us because there's been a lot of change and we need some stability. We need that guidance. We need to understand what's going on here. Or what is lingering from the past that's stopping you from fully leaning into this opportunity? So maybe it's a fear that it's not going to work out. Maybe there's an unconscious or conscious fear like, is my partner really going to support me in this next chapter? How are the kids going to respond if I'm working interstate or overseas or more often? How are my co-workers going to respond now that I'm on my own? Are they seeing me as a competitor? All of that. It's managing all of that. So I really want you to make sure that if you're doing a career pivot, or even if you're pivoting your business, right? You're pivoting from one service to another service, or you're pivoting your branding where maybe you were softly spoken and quiet before, and now you're just sassy. Now you're saying whatever the fuck you want to say, right? I've gone through that too, where I swear on the podcast now. How crazy is that? I never started off that way, but me as an authentic person, I do drop an F bomb here and there. I'm from Queensland. What do you expect, right? So I think it's just remembering all of that. It's getting that support during these times and anticipating that even if you're on the right path, even if you're accelerating your career, even if this was the absolute right decision for you, there may still be times where you feel anxious and panicky because you and your nervous system, your mind, body, and soul are just catching up to where you are, and it's shaking off the dust. It's shaking off some old wounds, and they might be activated. During times of change, our wounds get activated, but also the best parts of us get activated too. So I hope that that was helpful. Again, if you want to support yourself through a career pivot and really get clear on the direction you should be taking, we've got an aligned offers 3-day event coming up really soon where I'm going to do some exercises with you where we're going to look at where are you at now, like who you are at your core, and how can we make something incredibly unique. Again, for example, an accountant who is really into spirituality as well as a person. It and talking about how this accountant is creating a service that has that spiritual aspect to money, is centered around certain significant spiritual dates around money transfers, etc. Is it a niche market? Absolutely. But the people who are very into their spirituality and into their money, they will choose that person over everyone else. But that accountant had to pivot their career, had to really lean into who they are, what they stand for, what they want to do, and face the fear of my colleagues are going to judge me for this. Are they going to think I'm unprofessional? Who's going to think this? How are my family going to understand this when I had a really secure job at big company? How are they going to understand me working for myself when I had the VP job or I was promoted or this or that? All of that comes up. And so, like I said, I can help pull that out of you of that magic that you can offer. But then I'm also there for you if the anxiety and the fear comes up when it does. It's not an if, it's a when. We all face it. Every time I've achieved something greater in my business, greater in my career, greater personally, it's exhilarating at first. And then there's usually a sort of feeling of anxiousness or is this going to fall through? Like the fear comes in. And when you need to tap into your good people before the fear takes over, you got to lean in with love and optimism rather than giving into the fear and anxiety. All right, beautiful soul. So if you want to be part of that aligned offers, make sure you message me on Instagram. I'll give you the access. Or if you're in part of any of our programs, the Tranquil Trailblazers, the Business Without Burnout, the 20-Hour Business Week Academy, they are our core options. If you're part of any of that, you get access to the 3-day training. So make sure that you're in the Tranquil Trailblazers so you can access all the goodies in there. And I will see you on the next episode of the 4Q podcast. Remember, you're doing enough, so be kind to yourself.